Time for the X message. Remember, the word or letter X has a history far beyond the English tradition. And the message that God has for you is the X way. I'm Pastor John from Living Stones and Sunland, Tujunga Seventh-day Adventist Churches, and it's time for the X call to prayer. One of my favorite comic books when I was young was in the 80s. It was a big comic book called The X-Men. And I know today Marvel has now been co-opted. It definitely is not the Marvel of the 80s. But it always hit me between the eyes how close the X is to the Christian. In fact, there was even a comic book where the X was used as a cross. Interestingly enough, we know that probably Jesus was crucified on the Tau type cross, but there were many Christians that were crucified on the X cross. In fact, in the call to prayer, as I was going through the messages, I think it was last year, maybe a few months ago, where I had a message that was specifically about Andrew, who was crucified on an X cross, a Chi cross. Not a Tau, but a Chi cross. So many Christians did die on the Chi cross. The X message was given out. And in fact, in ancient Greek language, the word for Christ was Chi. In fact, you will see this throughout history. You will see the Chi and the Rho. It looks like a P. Chi, Rho. That you find all through early Christendom, and you find it especially in Egypt, Coptic Christianity, which explains the reason why the name of the city of Cairo is Cairo. That is a place that is believed by Christians there that Jesus grew up there in Cairo, the land of Christ. And in fact, Mark died. Mark the apostle died in Cairo, in the Christian quarter that to this day exists. Chi, or X, is very important to us. And that X message is powerful. In fact, as we're going along through Acts, let's move on it's chapter 28. We're almost done with Acts. It's amazing. We've gotten through this book. We're going to continue on. I'm right now debating what book to do next. I've been told by one individual that maybe Corinthians would be good, but that's a lot of work, but I'm looking forward to it. So let's go ahead and start moving. If you have ideas of what you would think, put it in the description box. So in chapter 28 of Acts, starting with verse 11. Well, I'm going to move backward. Again, just a little bit, verse 10, which says, they honored us in many ways. This was on the island of Malta. Remember, Paul had been bitten by this viper. He shook it off. It was on him for a little while. He shakes it off. And the people said, for sure he's died. And one of the gods, they said, that one of the gods has, he's being hammered by the God of justice. Remember that last week? But they found out that actually Paul must be superhuman because he didn't die from the viper. He continued on. Many people came to Christ because of that. Bad events can make good things happen. Hey, all of this is about bad events, isn't it? Paul himself is on a boat, and it was shipwrecked because of bad events. But yet God takes these bad events and turns them into amazing good events. We judge by human standards. God sees the heart. But on to that Chi message, that message of strength that I hope you will embed in your life. Let's continue on. So after 3 months, 3 months in Malta, they had a lot of time, along with all the soldiers and along with the crew from the Alexandrian ship that was destroyed, as well as all the people selling grain and stuff like that were planning to come across to Rome, but also all of those who were prisoners along with Paul. They were on Malta for 3 months until finally the weather cleared enough to be able to get back to sea again. So they put out to sea on a ship that had wintered in the island. As it was a Alexandrian ship. So here we go again. Another Alexandrian ship. You know, Egypt was always the center of trade in the ancient world. Rome became more, but Egypt is the place where you find like quality goods that you can't find anywhere else, like spices, like special materials that come down from, or should I say come up from places like Ethiopia and through Africa. But also, that's the center of even Asia, because the Asian trails coming down the Silk Road find their end at Egypt in Alexandria, and then it goes to a ship that goes on to Rome. Easier to get to Rome through ship than it is to go on land, because Greece is so hard. Ancient Macedonia was so hard to try to get through because the Achaean Islands, and also you have to go through all that ancient Constantinople, or what we call today as Istanbul. So it's better to go by ship. So another Alexandrian ship there put out toward Syracuse. But here's a little interesting tidbit. Notice here, they wintered on the island. It was in an Alexandria ship, and it was figurehead, or the front of the ship, was the twin gods. The twin gods, Castor and Pollux, or Pollux, with the X at the end, Xi in the Greek. I have some pictures of them. Here's a Christianization of those pictures. See there? See these two gods, Castor and Pollux, but both of them have a horse with them. Also, here's another one. This is a Romanization. It was, of course, Greek. It comes from the Iliad, and then the Odyssey. And the Iliad, they were like humans, and then the Odyssey, they kind of like became like demigods. And here they are, Castor and Pollux. They were survival or strength or purity. You see the horse, the white horse, the white horse. You see how they almost look like each other because they are twins. They are the Polydokes. The Polydokes, which is the twin born. My friends, they have that white horse. And that made me think as I was reading this text. There's another place in the Bible that has the white horse. Do you know where it is? A lot of places with white horses, I'm sure, but there's one in particular. There are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse of Revelation. White, red, black, coloras, or green or pale, what we oftentimes translate it as. White, the pure church, moving forward with strength. The rider has arrows, and he fires quickly the gospel out. The church moves quickly, and then comes the red horse, which is persecution. Nero at this time was on the throne. But persecution, true universal persecution, had not begun yet. Paul was about to begin that persecution, but he didn't realize it. Not that he wanted the persecution, but that his message would spread so quickly that the Roman Empire would feel that their world is turning upside down, and they would eventually try to protect themselves religiously from the Christian sect. Nero, a few years later, was to burn a part of Rome and then blame the Christians. The reason why, of course, he burned Rome, many historians believe, is that he was an artist and he wants to rebuild it in his nature, because he wanted to artistically reorganize, and he did. Rome became a beautiful city, while at the same time, the destruction socially that occurred was immense. My friends, when Christianity moves into a community, it changes things. When you bring the belief of Jesus into a community, things can never remain the same. That's what this week's sermon is all about. It is the last part of the series this next Sabbath on foundations, which goes to the Mount of Beatitudes, the Be Happy attitudes, the world-changing message. Isn't it interesting that these two Greek gods, but symbolized by those riding white horses, are on the front of the ship of Paul and all of those heading to Rome? Of course, they didn't immediately get to Rome. They headed on to a place called I'm so not good at this, Puteoli, an island where there were many brothers and sisters in the gospel that were there. And then they moved on to Rome proper. Coming in through Sicily, they started to head up the Appian Way on the roads. I've been to the Appian Way many times. The Appian Way is a place where he has wanted to be. Paul has wanted to go to Rome and travel on that Appian Way. But here's the interesting thing. Even though he wants to travel on it, the Appian Way is to be the last road that he travels on, long distance. For Nero, when it's time, when he burns Rome, he will blame the Christians. And Paul is one of their leaders. He will think, if I separate the head of the snake will die. But what he didn't realize is that the snake of Christianity, I'm sorry to call it a snake, let's call it something different. The Hydra of Christianity. Every time you lop one head off, 5 more will come out. And then you lop up this one and another 5 come out. My friends, the gospel cannot be killed if you have the X factor. And the X factor is none other than Christos, Kai, Christ. The symbol of the X is the symbol of that white horse that conquers the world with speed. My friends, the only way the devil can take Christianity that is real down is by joining it. The devil has to learn this, though, and he will learn it. But remember, since we're in the time of the white horse, persecution has not begun yet. It will spread. And then the blood of the martyrs will become the seed of Christianity. Next week, we will look at the entrance of Paul into Rome and what that means to Paul and what that means to us. Because this is a powerful message for you and for me. Never judge a book by its cover. It's so wonderful to have you here, and I'm going to be having in the next few moments. It's almost 7:15. It's time for intercession. But before you go, smash the like button, subscribe, become a part of the mission, the movement. You are important to Jesus as you give your life to Him who died for you. God bless you all, and see you in a few moments.